Certainly. Here's a rephrased and more polished version of your text, structured into coherent paragraphs for better readability and emotional flow. Sam Elliott's heartbreaking final letter, a quiet goodbye from a Hollywood legend. Sam Elliott's final letter to his fans has just been released, and it's leaving everyone at a loss for words. The Hollywood icon, known for his quiet strength and unmistakable presence, had remained largely out of the public eye in recent years. But now, in a deeply emotional and powerfully personal note, Elliott has spoken once more. What's inside isn't just moving, it's devastating. Even Laura Ingraham described it as deeply haunting during a live segment. Reporters are calling it tragic, and fans are still reeling from its unexpected release. This isn't your average celebrity story, it's raw, personal, and once you read it, you'll understand why the world is struggling to process it. Sam Elliott, the man behind the mustache, never needed much to make a lasting impact. One look, one gravel-coated line, and you knew exactly who he was. The cowboy hat wasn't a gimmick, the mustache wasn't for show, and that voice, it didn't come from acting school. It came from a life lived on his own terms, shaped by solitude, hard-earned wisdom, and an unwavering refusal to be anything other than himself. While Hollywood turned glitzier and louder, Sam chased something else entirely: authenticity. Whether he was riding across the plains in Tombstone or leaning quietly against a bar in the Big Lebowski, he portrayed men who didn't waste words. When he did speak, you listened. In recent years, though, fans noticed something different. Sam hadn't disappeared, but his presence had faded. No new film roles. No interviews. No red carpet sightings. He was never one to make noise, but this silence felt different, intentional. Some speculated it was age. Others whispered about his health. But true to form, Sam offered no explanation. He never chased fame, in fact, he seemed to avoid it. While others built empires out of controversy, Sam built something quieter, deeper: respect. The kind of respect that doesn't scream, it settles in. He was the kind of actor who made men want to grow mustaches, and made their sons want to listen more carefully to the way their fathers spoke. Raised in Oregon after being born in Sacramento, Sam Elliott entered Hollywood later than most. He was told early on he didn't have the look, too rugged, too Western, too niche. But those very things became his superpower. While others changed to fit the mold, Sam reshaped the mold to fit him. Over time, he became more than just an actor, he became a symbol. A symbol of grit, dignity, and timeless masculinity in a world that kept trying to redefine the term. When 1883 aired, younger viewers unfamiliar with his legacy asked, "Who is that guy?" Longtime fans just smiled. "That's Sam," they said. He didn't need to prove anything anymore. And yet, something had shifted. The clues were subtle, but they were there. He turned down big roles. Skipped press tours. Withdrew from public life in a way that felt methodical, not rushed, not fearful, just final. Like someone quietly closing the last chapter of a long, beautiful novel. So when the letter surfaced, handwritten, intimate, and heartbreakingly sincere, it hit like a thunderclap. Sam Elliott hadn't just stepped into the sunset. He had left something behind. Something deeply personal. Something that, according to journalists, felt like losing a family member. But before we get to that letter, we have to understand the man behind it. Because off-screen, Sam Elliott was more than the roles he played, he was a man who spoke carefully and meant every word. And when he finally decided to speak without a script, it broke people. If this letter truly is the last message he wanted to share, then every word counts. Sam Elliott's career wasn't forged on red carpets or magazine covers, it was carved slowly, with grit and grace. He didn't rise through the Hollywood ranks in a blaze of glory. His first credited role in 1969, card player number 2 in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, had no lines, no close-up, and no guarantee of more. But he showed up. And he kept showing up. In an industry obsessed with reinvention, Sam stayed grounded in who he was. The voice, the walk, the look, it was all genuine. He wasn't trying to be the next anyone. He was just Sam. And people started to notice. directors realized that if you needed someone who could speak volumes with a single look, or someone who could make a dozen words sound like scripture, you called Sam. If you needed someone to carry the emotional weight of a story without demanding the spotlight, you knew where to turn. His breakthrough came in the 1970s and continued into the early 80s, though not in the typical, explosive way. His rise wasn't a headline, it was a slow burn. A quiet accumulation of roles, each one deepening the mythos of the man. But now, with this letter, Sam Elliott has written his most unforgettable line. And for the first time, it wasn't in a movie script. It was real. Would you like the next portion written, perhaps a summary or the content of the letter itself? Certainly. Here's a rephrased and structured version of your text, transformed into clear, emotionally resonant paragraphs. Sam Elliott built a career on substance, not spotlight. Whether in westerns, war films, television movies, or miniseries, he never minded being second or third on the call sheet. That wasn't a problem for him, because it was never about top billing. It was about the work. That humility earned him a rare and lasting respect in Hollywood. He wasn't just an actor, he was an anchor. His presence gave films weight, truth, and quiet gravitas. If Sam Elliott was in your movie, it had a center. From Lifeguard to Mask, from Gettysburg to Tombstone, he portrayed men who carried sorrow in their eyes and purpose in their silence. He didn't steal scenes, he held them together. Off-screen, Sam lived even more quietly. He married actress Catherine Ross in 1984, and unlike so many Hollywood couples, their relationship stayed remarkably private. No tabloid scandals, no messy headlines, just decades of steady commitment built on mutual respect and the freedom to be individuals. They shared one daughter and a life far from the chaos of celebrity culture. It wasn't a curated brand or a performative persona. It was simply real. As he aged, things began to shift, not in front of the camera, but behind it. Sam became more selective. He gave fewer interviews. He turned down roles that didn't resonate. He even skipped award shows, quietly declining the fanfare. When asked why, he'd shrug and say something simple like, "I've said what I needed to say." It wasn't bitterness. It was peace. But that peace, over time, began to feel like distance. When A Star Is Born came out in 2018, it marked a rare return to the spotlight. Sam stepped into a major role late in his career and earned an Academy Award nomination for it. But even that moment, acclaimed as it was, felt more like a closing chapter than a new beginning. He wasn't chasing momentum. He wasn't angling for more. If anything, he seemed to be quietly stepping back, one measured step at a time, with no announcements and no drama. Just a gentle withdrawal, the kind only someone like Sam Elliott could make, graceful, unspoken, final. That's why the release of his handwritten letter hit so hard. He didn't tweet it. He didn't read it in a viral video. He didn't perform it. It surfaced quietly, sincerely, just like the man himself. And when it did, fans realized something heartbreaking. He had already begun to say goodbye, just not in the way anyone expected. And within that letter? That's where everything changed. That's where the quiet turned into something far more powerful. Sam Elliott never needed to raise his voice to be heard. He was a master of restraint, able to communicate more with a pause than most could with a page-long monologue. But lately, his silence had started to feel different, not poised, but distant. It was the kind of quiet that makes people uneasy, the kind that prompts the question, is something wrong? For those who had followed his journey for decades, the question grew heavier with time. The last few years should have been a victory lap. After his Oscar-nominated role in A Star Is Born, and his raw, unforgettable performance in 1883, many considered it a late career renaissance. Not that Sam had ever truly faded, he just never chased fame. It always found him, and he handled it on his own terms. But after 1883, he simply slipped from view. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just gone. At first, no one panicked. Sam had always been a private man, more likely to be found on a ranch in Oregon than at a Hollywood gala. He wasn't on Twitter. He didn't share selfies. He didn't post updates. But even for someone known for keeping to himself, this silence felt different. Public events where he was expected quietly removed his name. Interview requests were declined with no comment. Industry colleagues offered vague, cautious answers when asked about him. No one confirmed anything, but no one denied anything either. That's when fans started putting the pieces together. This wasn't a break. It felt like a retreat. A slow, deliberate disappearance. He wasn't promoting anything new. He wasn't lending his voice to commercials. And for a man whose voice had once been one of the most recognizable in America, that silence spoke volumes. Rumors spread, some feared health issues, others assumed he was simply done with Hollywood. Maybe he was finally enjoying a long-earned retirement. And if that were the case, who could blame him? He'd given over 50 years to the industry. If anyone had earned the right to walk away without a curtain call, it was Sam Elliott. But still, something didn't feel right. Fans began to revisit old interviews, re-watching them with a new lens. Lines that once seemed reflective now felt like subtle farewells. One resurfaced moment from a few years ago stood out. There comes a point where you stop looking for the next thing and start thinking about what you're leaving behind. At the time, it sounded philosophical. Now, it felt haunting. The most chilling part of it all wasn't what he said. It was what he didn't. No updates. No statements. No denials. But then again, Sam Elliott was never like other celebrities. And as the silence deepened, it stopped feeling like a choice and started to feel like a message. A message we're only just beginning to understand. Would you like to continue into the content of the letter or explore how fans and Hollywood responded to its release? Here's a rephrased and structured version of your lines, transformed into paragraphs with a smooth flow and emotional tone. At first, no one could quite put into words what was happening. Not yet. Then, quietly, something surfaced, something private, something never meant for cameras or microphones. Those closest to it all said the same thing: this changes everything. They didn't explain exactly what they meant, nor did they reveal the full details. But everyone agreed on one thing: it was deeply personal and devastating. The letter appeared quietly at first. A handful of journalists received an anonymous tip. A handwritten, emotional letter had emerged, authored by Sam Elliott himself. Skepticism quickly followed. Many assumed it was a hoax, a cruel attempt to generate headlines using the name of a man who had always carried himself with dignity. But as more information came to light, doubt faded. The handwriting was unmistakably his. The phrasing carried his unique cadence. And the weight of the words? Undeniably his. The media hesitated. Some argued the letter was far too private to publish. Others believed it was meant to be shared, a quiet farewell rather than a private confession. After intense internal discussions and legal reviews, a few outlets chose to move forward, with care and respect. The resulting headlines were soft but devastating: Sam Elliott's heartbreaking final letter to his fans released. The words hit like a gut punch. Reporters who read the letter said it felt so tragic, it almost didn't seem real. Some choked up trying to get through it. One late-night news anchor paused mid-sentence, looked off-camera, and quietly said, "I can't finish this." The letter wasn't polished or prepared, it wasn't a press release or a legacy statement. It was vulnerable, raw, and painfully human. In the letter, Sam reflected on his life, not by listing career milestones or awards, but in the simplest, most sincere terms. He wrote about the roles that changed him, the fans who stood by him, and how the years had passed quicker than he ever expected. He admitted he'd been slowing down, not just physically, but emotionally. "There's a certain silence you reach in your life," he wrote, "where you realize the echoes matter more than the noise." He spoke of gratitude, especially for those who never asked him to be anyone other than himself. "I never belonged in the spotlight," he confessed, "but you never made me feel like I was out of place." He thanked the quiet fans, the ones who didn't scream or swarm, who simply watched, listened, and understood what he was trying to say through his characters. But what cut the deepest were the lines where he hinted at something more final. He never named an illness, nor declared an end, but his words lingered just on the edge of farewell. If this is the last thing I get to say, let it be this: I remember you, I appreciate you, and I hope you heard me even when I wasn't speaking. This was Sam's way of doing what he'd always done, leaving the meaning for others to read between the lines. The response was overwhelming, not loud or dramatic, but deeply emotional. Fans wrote letters back. Celebrities posted tributes, not about his fame, but about his presence. Co-stars shared stories from set, how he held the silence just a little longer than necessary, as if making room for something unspoken. Social media lit up, not with gossip or debate, but with memories. People recalled the first time they heard his voice in a theater, the first time they saw him ride across a dusty screen. They shared how his mere presence made them feel steadier somehow, just by being there. That's what the letter did. It reminded everyone why Sam Elliott mattered. And though it wasn't a goodbye in the traditional sense, it felt like one, not because it was dramatic or grand, but because it sounded like a man who had made peace with the end of something. Maybe not life itself, but certainly the closing of a chapter, a presence. The letter's final line wasn't signed with his name. Instead, just 2 words: ride easy. And with that, Sam Elliott reminded everyone that even whispered goodbyes, said the right way, can echo forever. The letter's release shook Hollywood and beyond, yet there was no press conference. No video tribute. No orchestrated farewell from a studio. Just words on a page, quiet, unpolished, and painfully sincere. But the moment the letter was shared, it felt like the world stopped to listen. Within hours, it had been quoted by every major outlet, not summarized, but quoted word for word. There was no spin, no attempt to reshape or brand it. It was something people wanted to experience exactly as Sam wrote it. What followed wasn't the typical celebrity reaction cycle. This wasn't performative, it was deeply personal. Longtime friends and co-stars were among the first to respond. They didn't speak of Sam the celebrity, they spoke of Sam the man. Catherine Ross remained silent, perhaps unsurprisingly, but those who had worked closely with him began to share private memories. Fans responded, too, not with hashtags or trends, but with stories and clips. Social media filled with moments from Roadhouse, Tombstone, and We Were Soldiers, scenes where Sam brought unspoken pain and quiet strength to life. One user posted a clip from 1883, showing the subtle way Elliott's character broke. Would you like me to continue from that clip or help shape this into a specific style? Here's your text rephrased and organized into paragraphs for a smooth, reflective flow. A photo surfaced online, Sam Elliott sitting quietly beside a river, captioned simply, he wasn't acting. He was remembering. There was a palpable sense of mourning in the air, even though the letter never explicitly said he was gone. No death was confirmed, no obituary published. Yet people treated the letter as a kind of spiritual farewell, a final chapter written in ink. It didn't matter if Sam was still alive somewhere, sitting quietly on a porch in Oregon, the version of him that the world had known for decades had, in some unspoken way, stepped back from us. Even younger actors who had never worked directly with him felt compelled to weigh in. Miles Teller wrote that Sam Elliott taught him that restraint is power. Florence Pugh shared a clip of her grandfather, who had always said that Sam was the only actor he truly believed when he said, "I love you" on screen. It was this level of connection, generational, emotional, intimate, that made the response so overwhelming. What truly set this moment apart was how far it stretched beyond Hollywood. Military veterans, cowboys, teachers, construction workers, truck drivers, ordinary people posted photos of themselves with Sam's movies playing in the background. Some wore cowboy hats, others lit cigars, some simply sat in silence, captioning their photos with the words "Ride Easy." Talk shows, normally filled with gossip and headlines, devoted time to reflect on Sam's influence. One host said, "He didn't just play men we admired, he reminded us of men we lost." Another added, "This is what it looks like when someone exits with grace, on his own terms." There were even calls for a national tribute, perhaps a special Oscar segment. But those closest to Sam hinted that he wouldn't have wanted any of that. He already said what he needed to say, one friend told reporters. And when Sam said it, he meant it.